Good morning. Before I begin, I want to recognize one of our sister friends extraordinaire that's here with me today, Fontella. Fontella's over here, Reverend. She's been a phenomenal person to work with, and thank you all for the invite to be here today at this really important event. Today I want to talk about the Arkansas Birthing Project, which is a community-based, culturally aware social support system intervention to improve maternal and infant outcomes that we wholeheartedly support in Arkansas and in other locations as well. So I want to give you a little bit of background about it and talk about what we just want to get, the message we want to get forth today regarding the need for social support interventions for Black women who are pregnant, the negative impacts of racism on the maternal and infant health outcomes in America, and to talk about this social intervention approach that we use in order to be able to improve the health status of women and children in our communities. We've all heard that statement about, that old idiom about where you live should not determine whether you live or die. And unfortunately, even more so today, that's very, very true. Unfortunately, as you all are probably very well aware, in the southern United States especially, particularly in rural communities, there is a disparate occurrence of ill health and sometimes, unfortunately, death that occurs among women of color and babies of color, and most especially for Black women and Black babies. Black women are more likely to die, 4 times more likely to die during childbirth than white women. Black babies are 2 times as more likely to die in infancy than white babies. We have a crisis in America. Rural residents are more likely than other Americans to think that their community doesn't have enough doctors or other resources to provide health supports. And that is certainly true, as I said, in southern United States, but also in many other rural communities across our country. So what are some of the disparities that we see in rural health when we start talking about the needs of women? There are greater distances to a hospital that has obstetric services that are appropriate for them. Rural women tend to enter into prenatal care later, and by virtue of that, often problems that might be occurring or arise are not detected until very late in their pregnancy. Their hospitalizations with complications during pregnancy, the rates are much higher in rural women, unfortunately. Low birth weight and preterm births are more prevalent. Of course, unfortunately, infant mortality is also a prevalent indicator in women who live in rural communities. And they tend to, unfortunately, they deliver in low-risk facilities that don't have the higher level of care that is needed often when women are confronted with various issues that arise during their pregnancy and when they're giving birth. They also don't have adequate income or adequate support for family planning services so that they get what they need to be able to make informed decisions about spacing their children and their families. And as a result of that, pregnancies are not planned well. So I mentioned this earlier, but this is sort of a stark graph of the care statistics for Black women who are pregnant. Black women are 4 times more likely to die, unfortunately. There are 44 deaths per 100,000 live births in Black women compared to white women in our country. When we talk about disparities among Black people, among Black women in obstetrics, there are some very specific conditions that sort of jump out there that we need to all be aware of, and we certainly need to make others aware of as well when we're providing care. Hemorrhage tends to be more prevalent in non-Hispanic Black women, as well as cardiovascular and coronary diseases. It's been indicated that many Black women enter into care with undiagnosed cardiac diseases and conditions that unfortunately contribute to ill health, sometimes difficulties and complications during their pregnancy and delivery, and unfortunately sometimes can contribute to their death. Also, embolism or blood clots is a very real, unfortunate concern. And There's a growing concern about mental health needs, postpartum depression and other mental health conditions that unfortunately can affect negatively birth outcomes in women of color. So, of course, for us in Arkansas, we look at the Mississippi Delta as a place where we need to focus a lot of our attention and concern because of the historical context of the lives of people who live in the Delta. If you all are not aware, the Mississippi Delta is probably one of the poorest regions in our country, and it's certainly in Arkansas. The communities that exist in the Delta tend to have lower income and a greater percentage of our African American populations. And by virtue of that, unfortunately, the health conditions, the health status of individuals who live in those communities is very poor. And Ms. Johnson says it best, regardless of race, maternal loss is a tragedy for everyone. We need to highlight this reality while being sensitive to the fact that this problem has disproportionately affected Black women. It begs tough questions about discrimination, bias, how we evaluate social determinants of health, and how that plays a role in our health outcomes. I'm sure you all have recently heard about the track star, the Olympiad, who died giving birth. And from all indications, it appears that her autopsy results indicated that she actually perhaps had eclampsia and perhaps a stroke during this. That is unbelievable. This is a person who is in a magnificent physical condition, and she died in childbirth. That is not acceptable. It is an outrage. We should all be concerned. So let's talk about social support interventions for Black women who are pregnant and how they can affect the outcomes of pregnancy by virtue of the fact that they've got another individual, another person, another resource available to women that may not traditionally have been available in her community or may not have been utilized well in her community. And we want to specifically talk about what we do in Arkansas in terms of providing that support to women in rural and also urban communities to try to make a difference in their health outcomes. So Birthing Project USA is a 45-year-old Black maternal and child health organization that was funded in Sacramento, California by Catherine Hall Trujillo. We call her Mama Cat. And she is a native of Arkansas. She was born in a little town called Moscow, Arkansas, which is right outside of Pine Bluff, Arkansas. And Catherine actually was educated in California and actually worked for the California Department of Social Services, was a fiscal administrator there, and was very concerned about the huge amounts of money they were spending on at-risk babies. So they were spending thousands and sometimes millions of dollars on babies that were born too soon, taking care of them in the neonatal intensive care unit. So she set out to do a social experiment with some of her friends. She and 9 of her friends gathered together in a group, which we call a bunch, and they decided that they were going to provide support to high-risk pregnant women in that community during their pregnancy to see what might happen if they would do this for an extended period of time. So for about 18 months, these women were paired up. Each woman was paired with a pregnant woman who was high risk, and she identified them through the Department of Health, and they were astounded at what they saw, what happened, because normally the expectation would be that the babies would be born too soon, that there would be complications, there would be hospitalizations, and they found that that didn't happen. So they replicated that. They did that several times, replicated it in the community, and ended up actually founding a community clinic in a high-risk community in Sacramento that began to offer care for women who lived in those communities who were at risk of not getting access to adequate services. And they also began to replicate, she began to replicate this project in other states. Well, Essence Magazine heard about her, did an article, and found out, and what she found astounded her because people started contacting her from all over the country wanting to establish birthing projects in their locations. And so she ended up leaving the California Department of Health and never returned. She said that her supervisor called her one day and asked her, "Are you coming back to work?" Because she had taken a leave of absence. And she said she'd forgotten all about it because she'd gotten so involved in the work. And of course, that was her life calling. And of course, we're all very thankful for her because for me, she came to Arkansas to a March of Dimes meeting. and presented. I was just astounded by the work she was doing. And me, having had worked in the health department for many years and being very aware of the conditions that people lived and worked under and the health conditions that affected communities of color, I was just mesmerized by the work that she was doing. And so we worked together with a local community organization and actually established a birthing project in Arkansas in 1999. Well, the birthing project was working really well in that community organization for a few years, and then they had a change in leadership and a change in funding and a bunch of other things, and so we kind of disbanded for a few years. And then I decided to start picking it up again on a part-time basis and continue my work with the health department. And so we began the birthing project again, and we've gone on since then. We've had up to 10 birthing projects in Arkansas at a time. Currently, we have 6 active projects because, as you know, women, they volunteer to work for a year, during the pregnancy and for the first year of life of the baby. And so you may have a project in existence for about 18 to 24 months. And then they can decide if they want to start a new project or if they want to rest for a while or whatever. So we kind of work with people on that regard. But we've been going strong since. Currently, we have 6 active projects in Arkansas. And our goal is for next year to double the projects that we have as we continue on. We especially had challenges during the pandemic, and actually thanks to Rose and some of the grant support they gave us, we were able to work with some local community doulas to get support for women that were really experiencing some issues during the pandemic. So I want to thank Rose again for that. So our social support intervention is pretty simple. We look at the overall health and need of the mom and her babies. And we try to tailor the way that we interact with women based on their individual needs and utilize community partnerships that are relevant, that help to make a difference when we're providing support to women and trying to access what they need and then what they want, and how they kind of look at things in order to be able to be really supportive and for them to believe that we're investing truly in them. So we have people that call bunch managers, who are the leaders in our group. Those are the community women that say, okay, I want to start a birthing project in my community. And they recruit a group of women that we call sister friends. Like I said, they're usually 10, sometimes 8, depending on the size of the community. And those women in turn recruit a pregnant woman in their community, or pregnant women in their community might hear of this and ask to be a part of it. And then they pair together and they decide to work together. Now, sometimes the little sisters will be very specific with us, and they'll tell us that they don't want a woman their mama's age, they don't want somebody their grandmama's age, or they might want somebody around their age. So we try to group people depending on what their needs are, what the requests are, and then we ask that they interact with each other on a regular basis. The sister friends agree to work with their little sisters at least 8 hours a month with some kind of contact. It can be face-to-face, it can be by phone. In recent years, texting is real great. I mean, that's a good way to get people talking and interacting with each other, and so that's acceptable. And then we also have people in our groups called elders, who are older women who provide their life experiences and support to the organization and to the groups to give sometimes some balance to some of the discussions that go on and some of the decisions that are made. So we match them, they meet 8 hours a month, and then we offer support during that pregnancy, and it might be that a woman needs food, she might need housing, she just might need somebody to talk to, she might need some resources for herself, physical resources, she might need to access DHS or health services or social support services. She might need diapers and clothing for her baby. She might need some support for her other children if she has them. And so her sister friend helps her to identify how to get those things. We encounter a lot of women who have access to things, but they don't know how to use them. And so we utilize the wisdom of people in local communities to access those things that are in those communities to increase the chances that our women, our moms, our little sisters are going to be successful. Other things that we make sure about is that the women get prenatal care providers. We want to get them into prenatal care and then make sure that they keep their appointments. And so the sister friend is right on top of that. She's checking in, making sure that she's getting her care needs met. And if she can't If there's a problem or there's a hiccup, then we try to work together to kind of figure out how to address that. We also talk about family planning. That's a real important discussion. And we want to talk about those things before somebody actually has the baby, so that they have that in mind during the process of during the pregnancy and preparing for the birth of the baby, what's going to happen next, so that you're already kind of prepared for that discussion. And then, of course, preparing for their new babies. We encourage our women to dream, to think about the future. And what we found is that many of our little sisters don't. They live day to day. And so it's very important for them to have a perspective about what they want, not only for themselves, but also for their babies and their other children. So we have some celebrations built into the process that we use. We do baby showers, community baby showers. When most of the babies in the bunch are born, we have a big baby shower to celebrate the new life that's coming into our communities. And it's really a fun time. During the pandemic, we had drive-by baby showers, where people would drive by, we'd give out cupcakes and celebrate and cheer for the babies. We have what we call a strut and stroll event each year, where we celebrate women. We celebrate our sister friends. We celebrate the work that we're doing in our communities. We have a dreaming ceremony where we actually have all the sisters and the babies in the bunch that can attend to form what we call a sister circle, and we actually pass the babies around and whisper into their ears the things that we want for them for the future. So we believe that we speak positive affirmations into the universe, and it happens. It will occur. And so that's an opportunity for us to share not only our beliefs and feelings about the moms, but also their babies and what we think they can achieve for the future. And it has a very profound effect upon them. And naturally, we celebrate the birthdays. When our babies turn a year old, when most of the babies turn a year old, we have a birthday party for them. When Fawn and I were just talking about that, it's time to have a birthday party, because we've got a whole new group of babies now that are turning one. In fact, we were remarking the other day, they're one, they turned one. It happens so quickly. So that's going to be a big thing that we're going to be looking for this. In fact, next month, we're going to have what we call a baby Q, which is a barbecue birthday party that we have all our new babies come out to, and the families, anyone that wants to come out. It's a big deal. So each birthing project is community-driven. Each birthing project is different. Each birthing project utilizes local people, local volunteers, not necessarily health professionals, but people who have a heart for giving and for providing support in their local community. Mama Cat tells us that one of the criteria for a sister friend is somebody to have good sense and is willing to make that commitment, that time commitment. We do get people sometimes that volunteer that aren't necessarily, we think, good sister friend material for a lot of reasons. They may have real strong opinions about how they think people should act and believe and whatever. And so we don't want to turn away any help, so we find other things for those people to do. We've had one lady that was did beautiful crochet work, and so she decided that she was going to be our blanket maker. So she makes baby blankets for us, which is great. They're beautiful. And others that do quilts and those kind of things. So we find things for people to do, help us get resources, help us find diapers and other supplies. There's a space for everybody in the birthing project, because we're taking care of our communities. There are other ways that we tell our story, too. We actually have a website, and we have blog posts on the website that deal with particular issues of concern to women. I was really excited. My first baby in the birthing project was recently graduated from Clark Atlanta University in Atlanta. And we're real proud of her. But we've been friends over the years. I met her mom when she was pregnant with her, and we've just been friends. We talk all the time. They call me for advice. I feel real honored to be still a part of that connection. But that's what happens. We end up making those kind of connections that last a lifetime. Fawn has several little sisters that call her regularly and check in with her, and she's checking in with them. And, it's like she's a part of the family, and we're part of each other's family. We're part of each other's lives. But I think more importantly, what we do is we model for people that may perhaps not have had that opportunity to have that kind of connection with someone, so that they feel that like they're not alone, that there are resources available for them, and that somebody's in their corner, right or wrong, good or bad. Sometimes interesting things come up, but we deal with it. And then we have educational modules that we utilize. We have some on our website, and we're in the process of developing some additional ones because we certainly need to talk more about, we think, the cesareans and inductions. We're seeing a 100% increase in those procedures, to the point where many of our young women thought that it was supposed, when you have a baby, you're supposed to have a cesarean section. That is not acceptable. So we have modules that look at childbirth education, pregnancy and sickle cell disease, breastfeeding, post-delivery warning signs, folic acid, immunizations, car seat safety, proper periods of crying, all the things that we think, basic information that we think our little sisters might need. Their sister friends receive the modules and then share that information with them as they interact with each other. And we actually had to transform a lot of our materials into plain language because all that medical jargon, it wasn't getting across. People were just glazing over with that stuff. So we actually did some videos and, we try to be, kind of hip, if you will, to try to get people interested in the work that we're doing so that they, begin to incorporate the information, but have it delivered to them in a way that makes sense to them and is understandable to them. So we like to think that we're creating diamonds. Arkansas is the diamond state. And, diamonds are produced under great pressure. And so we think that we are creating diamonds in our communities, people that can be strong contributors to their local communities because of the support and the love that we give them through the Birthing Project. And so these ladies are demonstrating our belief in the diamonds in our community. Something else that we've been involved in is the Perinatal Quality Improvement Institute has a program called Speak Up for Black Women. And they use improvement science to improve maternal health, but we've been using their mnemonic Speak Up to be able to promote speaking up for women when you see racist acts and behaviors at work in locales, particularly as our women are going into the health spaces and other spaces trying to access services. So the Speak Up, the mnemonic, we think is perfect for us in terms of helping us to remember how important it is for us to be activists in this area. So we ask you to set limits when it comes to when you see racism or you see discrimination in action, determine what you're going to do, and then practice and prepare what you're going to say or how you're going to respond when you encounter those situations, to express your concerns in a respectful and professional manner, but be willing to do so, to apologize if you've done something that you think is discriminatory or biased against another individual and start over, to keep trying to improve your practice so that you become better and better at this, because it is hard for many people to respond. When you see it at work, sometimes it's easier to just be quiet and not say anything, but that doesn't help anyone. So we've got to become more proficient at speaking out when we see these things in practice. To uncover and learn more and more about explicit bias, implicit bias, and how it works and how it affects the health outcomes of communities, and particularly communities of color, and more particular, Black women. And to persuade others to speak up also and to become ambassadors for Speak Up. And Speak Up has a whole ambassador program that we adopt and we support. Something else that we're involved in too is Giving Birth in America. We actually have been partnered with the organization called Every Mother Counts, and they actually go around and do films highlighting experiences about giving birth in America, and just recently completed a film called Giving Birth in America, Arkansas. And we actually have had 2 premieres in Arkansas of this film, and it features women that we've interacted with and some of the doulas in our community that we interact with that are talking about their birthing experiences and some of the challenges that they've encountered because of some of the discrimination and other lack of resources they have in their communities. But it can be accessed also online through this web link, Giving Birth in America, Every Mother Counts. And of course, we certainly support Dr. Shalon Irving's Maternal Action Project, Hear Her, which, as you all are probably well aware of, Dr. Shalon Irving, who lost her life several years ago in the postpartum period. I think it was like a month after she had given birth to her baby. She died from from eclampsia as well. And it was, she went to the medical providers many times during that period and was not taken seriously, unfortunately, and lost her life. So we want to encourage people to hear Black women and to listen to them. And so if we had to propose some next steps for anyone who want to be active in this work, we want to, you to investigate Speak Up and to incorporate the Speak Up mnemonic into your practice as you practice anti-racism and anti-bias work, to share the Speak Up video and complete the online information, the course that they have, while we all need to speak up for pregnant Black women, to take the Harvard implicit bias test if you haven't already. It's very telling, very revealing, and very helpful to you in your own self-assessment process, to view and share Every Mother Counts video, Giving Birth in America, Arkansas, and there'll be others too that come out, but Giving Birth in America is going to be very important, a film process that I think that we can utilize to bring more awareness to this whole tragedy that we're experiencing. To support Dr. Shalon Irving's Hear Her Action project, because that's a very important and powerful way that we can, again, encourage people to listen to the needs of Black women, and to expand your knowledge about maternal mortality, not only in Arkansas, but across this nation. Unfortunately, Arkansas has the #1 mortality rate of Black women, in the United States. And learn more about us, the Arkansas Birthing Project, and also contact Birthing Project USA if you might be interested in starting a birthing project in your local community. So, if anyone has any questions?
I had a teen mothers group that we partnered with the Urban League.
Where are you? What's
Tulsa, Oklahoma.
In Tulsa.
To have them to come here, but unfortunately something happened and it was not as successful. And I began following again after I became a doula. And so you answered my question. I would love to have the Birthing Project back in Tulsa again.
We'd love to get you connected. Because certainly, I think there's a space for doulas and local community volunteers to work together to make sure women have that broad spectrum report during what I call the 4th trimester, which is that period right after birth. We need to be real focused on that.
Could you please just tell us a little about granny midwives in Arkansas?
Yes, ma'am. I understand that your grandmother, your great-grandmother, was a granny midwife. Granny midwives practice pretty extensively across the United States and especially the American South before the advent of hospitalization for births. And unfortunately, during the 1940s, and with the medicalization of birth and birthing in hospitals, they were sort of run out of their roles by legislation, if you will. Where they were legislated that they had to get training and they had to get certified and go through all these processes and be able to practice when these women had been practicing for years in their communities and were very skilled practitioners. Very rarely did they lose babies or moms. And as a result of that practice, we believe that a big hole has been placed in our community of care, or continuum of care for women, African American women especially, because African American women, as you probably realize, during the early 20th century were not allowed to give birth in hospitals. And so we had to have these resources in our community when we were giving birth. So I think a great disservice has occurred because of the advent of doing away with these practitioners who were extremely skilled in our communities in assisting in birth, because not only did they come during the birth, they would come before the women had babies. They'd make sure they had food, they'd take care of the family, they would wash and cook and do all the things that's really stress for women. And when we did away with that support, that method of support, I think we did away with we made a big hole in our continuum of care for women in our communities. But Kimmery, there were many of us that knew granny midwives or had some of them in our families. Probably other people here have known about them or had some people in their families that may have acted in their resolve. I think the closest thing we think about today would be a doula, but these women actually delivered babies. They're called lay midwives.
My name's Ella Ewart Pierce. I work for the Department of Health and Human Services, and I think I emailed with you yesterday.
Yes, yes.
But my question is, the spectrum of types of care services in the Arkansas Birthing Project program is really, really broad. And I wonder if you could comment on some of the maybe unexpected partnerships that you've had to develop, because between diapers and transportation and food, and there's just a whole lot. So I'm just interested in how you've connected.
Birthing projects take on the flavor of their local communities. And so those leaders in those local communities, we certainly empower them to seek out resources in their community. Personally, the things that we've had to deal with were food banks, dealing with food banks, diaper banks, attorneys, housing specialists, sometimes getting people access to Medicaid and insurance services that they might be eligible for, but they weren't aware of it. I mean, it just takes on a real broad swath of things in communities that people might need. We've had women that were couch surfing and needed a place to live, and so we try to help them. If they haven't, sometimes they work it out on their own. They get family and friends to stay with and support them, but sometimes we have to try to get housing for them. So it just depends on what the needs are. We try to seek them. Sometimes we're not successful. But most of the times, it's amazing at what's out there that people just don't know how to access. And sometimes having an advocate for you makes all the difference in the world. Somebody that can articulate the words that need to be articulated to help you get in the spaces you need to get into, and you may not have the words yourself. And they also learn from that too, by being with their sister friends. They learn how to articulate those things and get things for themselves.
You just spoke some of the words that I was going to speak. Last month I became a doula. I got certified. And that's when you're saying helping women navigate themselves during their pregnancy, helping the partner understand the support that he's supposed to give. A lot of these things, the hospitals, what I learned in going through this year, is not really respecting the wishes of that person that's coming in to give birth, and having someone to navigate that understand the risks of whatever it is involved. I really now understand how important it is, special in the community that we live in.
Amen.
So I appreciate this, hearing you resonate some of the things that I heard while taking the training and getting the certification. Now it's always coming in twofold. So I appreciate that information that you gave.
Thank you very much. And congratulations on becoming a doula. We need more men doulas. And that's having the male component more developed, that's something we need to work on, because women don't have babies by themselves. And I think sometimes that's not recognized in many of these programs. And families are still together, whether people want to believe it or not. People are still interacting. Men are still a part of the children's lives. So I think we need to do more in getting men involved. So I want to do more with Robe, myself personally, so that we can make more connections with the men involved with our families, so that we have a more rounded approach to dealing with our family, supports. Something that you touched on, though, in terms of trauma, I think many women that we serve are victims of trauma. A lot of trauma. It can have been when they're in their childhood, wherever, in their communities, wherever, and then when they come into the medical spaces, unfortunately, sometimes they suffer from post-traumatic stress, and they actually experience more trauma, getting unwanted examinations, getting unwanted, or getting ignored, or feeling unsafe in those spaces. That should not be happening. So it's something that we all need to be more aware of, and we all need to be more attentive to when we're providing support. We try to encourage our sister friends to actually be in the delivery suites with their little sisters when they have the babies. I was there when my baby was born. I call her my baby, but when my first baby was born. Anyway, I think it's important, just not only for just our ownership of that person, but also for them to have another voice in that room that can see things and hear things that they might not be seeing or hearing because they're actively involved in birthing.
Thank you again for speaking this morning, and congratulations to our guy over here for becoming a doula.
Yes.
I'm also a doula as well, so
Oh.
come on. Appreciate you, my guy. How do you help the men in your community, like, to go through this birthing and postpartum process?
That's a good question. That's something we need to work more on. We've been more so focused on the women. Sometimes men do come forward and they want to be a part, but we don't really have a good enough process yet, I think, to really fully involve them. That's something we need to work on, and that's something I'm hoping I learn more about while we're here during this conference and interacting with all of you as well. But that's a good point. Thank you.
My question for you is how do you handle the other outside things that are affecting our moms in our communities? So are your workers, are they community health worker trained or anything like that, or are they just there as a support system? And to speak on the daddy doulas, we actually have a daddy doula that works in our center, and he is there to facilitate those conversations so that we can bring dads back to the table.
That's a good question. The people that work with us are volunteers. They're not community health workers. They're not healthcare professionals. Now, they may be healthcare professionals, they may be community health workers, but that's not a requirement for them to work with us. Now, we've actually had a few of our volunteers that have actually initiated community health worker training because they want more information and they want to be more focused in their work. And that's going to be real helpful to us as a whole because they can certainly, the skills they learn, we'll be willing to share them with others. We also have a few nurses that work with us, but they don't work as nurses, they're working as volunteers. And in fact, one of our trainers is a nurse practitioner. And probably because of our nursing backgrounds, we probably have a keener awareness of some of the things that people need and some of the things that go on in the spaces that women have to go into, but that we see that as a plus. Yeah. But I think there's a role for everybody. I think there's a role for doulas, there's a role for community health workers, there's a role for volunteers, there's a role for all of us because this crisis is big and we need to throw all resources at it, not just one siloed group. All of us need to be working together because it's huge. It's a huge issue and all of us are needed. I've been in public health for 40 years and we've been talking the same stuff for 40 years and here we are and it's getting worse. It's getting worse. So that tells me that what we've been doing doesn't work. Yes.
Good morning. My name is Velvet, and I am part of the sickle cell community, and I noticed that you had resources that you mentioned for pregnant women and sickle cell. And so what I wanted to find out from you is are you working with maybe a multidisciplinary team when you come into contact with people who are pregnant and live with sickle cell? And if so, what is your procedure or how are you navigating that?
Well, we refer people out for services. We don't have anyone in-house that specializes in sickle cell in particular. We refer people out for services. And in Arkansas, a lot of the sickle cell resource is in Little Rock. And that can be a stretch for some people in terms of transportation and that kind of thing.